You know that distinct, that totally terrifying moment when you are trying to speak a new language and your brain just abruptly stops working?
Oh, yeah. The sudden freeze.
Right. You could be standing in a cafe or, I don't know, a dinner party, and someone asks you a completely benign question.
Like, how is your coffee?
Exactly. Just how is your coffee? But instead of just answering naturally, your mind turns into this frantic, completely disorganized filing cabinet.
Yeah, just paper flying everywhere.
You are mentally yanking open drawers, desperately trying to unearth the correct past tense verb, cross-referencing grammar rules, and sweating over whether you are about to, use the wrong preposition and embarrass yourself.
It is exhausting. It's the cognitive paralysis of adult language learning.
By the time you actually string a sentence together, you sound like a robot and the conversation has already moved on.
Right, because it's a very specific kind of mental gridlock. I mean, when we communicate in our native language, the process is largely subconscious.
You don't even think about it.
No, not at all. The thoughts just flow into words without us checking the mechanical scaffolding underneath. But when you are operating in a new language, especially in those intermediate stages, every single syllable becomes a conscious, highly scrutinized decision.
It's awful.
It really is. You are effectively trying to drive a car while simultaneously rebuilding the engine.
Which is frankly why so many of us hit a wall and just give up on language learning entirely. We get tired of feeling inarticulate.
Absolutely.
But welcome to today's deep dive, because we are looking at a strategy that completely flips that dynamic on its head. And our mission today is incredibly focused.
Very focused.
We are pulling from a single, rather unassuming line of text that actually serves as this master blueprint for modern language acquisition.
Yeah, it really packs a punch.
It does. The source is a title from a language learning resource, which simply reads, "Do you overthink everything? English podcast for daily life conversation B1 listening practice."
On the surface, I mean, it reads like a standard piece of internet content.
Right.
But hidden within that specific combination of phrases is a highly sophisticated approach to cognitive load management and, well, language pedagogy.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the immediate thing that jumps out is the psychology of that hook.
The overthinking part.
Yeah. Instead of a standard transactional language prompts like how to order a coffee or asking for directions to the train station, this resource leads with a deeply introspective, almost intrusive question. Do you overthink everything?
It's provocative.
It really is. It is targeting a universal psychological vulnerability right out of the gate.
Well, what's fascinating here is that we really have to consider why adult learners struggle so much more than children when acquiring a new language.
Is it just neuroplasticity?
Actually, no. I mean, neuroplasticity plays a role, but it is largely about ego and identity.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because children do not have a fully formed ego to protect, right? So they babble, they make mistakes, and they just absorb everything.
I don't care if they look silly.
Exactly. Adults, however, bring all their insecurities, their desire to appear competent, and their complex internal lives to the table.
We want to sound smart.
Right. So when traditional language courses force an adult to role-play a simplistic transactional scenario like ordering an apple, it creates this dissonance.
Because it's boring.
Yes. The adult brain is bored by the content, but frustrated by the lack of vocabulary. This dissonance breeds anxiety, which linguists refer to as a high affective filter.
Ah, an affective filter. I see where this is going. If your affective filter is high, if you are stressed, bored, or feeling foolish, your brain physically blocks the absorption of new information.
It shuts down.
It is like trying to pour water into a jar with the lid screwed on tight.
That's a great way to put it.
So by centering the lesson on a complex cognitive habit like overthinking, this resource is attempting to bypass that artificial filter entirely.
It is leveraging our innate narcissism, really.
Yeah. And our desire to understand our own minds to just trick us into caring about the material.
Bypassing the filter is the crucial mechanism here. I mean, when you are listening to a topic that resonates with your lived emotional experience, like the anxiety of overthinking, your brain prioritizes meaning over mechanics.
Meaning over mechanics.
Exactly. The desire to glean an insight about your own mental health basically overrides the anxiety about understanding the grammar.
Because you actually care about the answer.
Right. The stress hormone, cortisol, actually drops because you are no longer treating the audio as a test you have to pass. You are treating it as a mirror.
Wow.
And when that happens, the hippocampus, which is responsible for forming new memories, is suddenly freed up to encode the vocabulary contextually.
That makes perfect sense neurologically, but wait, I have to push back here. I have to point out a massive paradox.
Okay, let's hear it.
Learning a new language is inherently an exercise in severe overthinking.
Well, yes, it can be.
As we established, you are hyperanalyzing every word, second-guessing your pronunciation, and translating everything in your head before you speak. It's like trying to assemble IKEA furniture without the instructions, right?
In the dark.
Exactly. So, if a learner's brain is already operating at maximum capacity, just trying to figure out where the verbs go, wouldn't introducing a complex psychological concept like overthinking into the lesson cause their brain to completely short circuit?
You're saying it's too much load.
Yeah. It feels like asking someone who is drowning to analyze the chemical composition of the water.
I love that analogy. And you're right, that would absolutely happen if the delivery mechanism wasn't carefully calibrated to protect the learner's cognitive bandwidth.
Okay.
And this is where we have to analyze the second half of our source text, which specifically categorizes this as B1 listening practice delivered via an English podcast.
Ah, so the format itself is the safety valve.
Yes.
It manages the complexity of the topic by strictly controlling how the learner interacts with it.
Exactly. Let's break down the significance of that B1 label. In the framework of language proficiency, B1 is the intermediate threshold, and it is widely considered the most brutal plateau in the language learning journey.
The B1 slump.
The B1 slump, yes. At the A1 and A2 beginner levels, progress feels rapid because you are learning tangible, concrete things, right? Colors, numbers, survival phrases.
The bathroom, that sort of thing.
Exactly. You are building a raft to stay afloat. But at B1, you are attempting to transition from mere survival to actual nuanced expression to daily life conversation.
It seems like at B1, you're caught in this intensely frustrating limbo
Very much so.
because you possess these complex, nuanced adult thoughts and opinions, but you are restricted to the vocabulary of a toddler.
Yes.
The gap between what you want to say and what you are actually capable of saying is just vast.
It's huge.
That dissonance alone has to be a major source of the overthinking we were just talking about.
It is the primary source of intermediate burnout. I mean, traditional learning methods often fail B1 learners because they continue to treat them like beginners.
Just feeding them slightly longer dialogues about booking hotel rooms.
Right, which they don't care about. But the adult brain is starving for abstraction.
Interesting.
So this resource solves the B1 bottleneck by providing what we might call a cognitive sandbox.
Cognitive sandbox.
Yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the B1 rating means the audio is engineered to use familiar grammatical structures and accessible vocabulary, but it applies them to an advanced adult concept.
A sandbox is a great way to visualize it. When you are a beginner, you are just trying not to drown in the ocean of a new language.
Right.
But B1 passive audio gives your brain a safe and closed space to play with concepts you already deeply understand. Concepts like anxiety or overthinking.
Exactly, using new linguistic tools.
It allows for low-stakes processing. And that low-stakes element has to be directly tied to the fact that this is a podcast, right?
Yes.
It is inherently passive.
The passive nature of a podcast is critical for pushing through the intermediate plateau.
Because you don't have to talk back.
Exactly. When you are engaged in a live conversation, your brain is splitting its resources between decoding what the other person is saying and frantically drafting your upcoming response.
Right, you're just waiting for your turn to speak, panic translating.
Exactly. The pressure of immediate production, the demand that you must speak, skyrockets your cognitive load. By utilizing a podcast for listening practice, that demand is entirely removed.
Because you aren't forced to speak, your brain can redirect all that scattered energy purely into pattern recognition and comprehension.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about formulating a response, so you actually have the bandwidth to notice how the speaker uses a specific phrasal verb or how their intonation rises at the end of a thought.
You're actually listening.
Yeah, you are absorbing the architecture of the language without the pressure of having to build your own house on the spot.
And that leads to the development of true fluency, which, is not about memorizing a dictionary.
It's not.
No. Fluency is the ability to infer meaning from context.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you are listening to a B1 podcast about overthinking, you might not know the clinical English term for cognitive distortion.
Right, that's pretty advanced.
But when the host describes the visceral feeling of lying awake at 2 a.m., agonizing over an email you sent 3 days ago, You understand exactly what they mean.
We've all been there.
Exactly. Your brain fills in the linguistic gaps using contextual clues and your own lived experience.
Wow.
This trains the neural pathways to operate in the target language rather than constantly translating back to your native tongue.
Which brings us to the core practical tip for anyone listening who's currently battling their way through a new language.
Of the application.
Yeah. We are looking at a strategy for integrating this practice into your actual daily routine. The source explicitly mentions daily life conversation.
Right.
And when I think about how to actually implement this, it goes far beyond just casually listening whenever you have a free moment.
Oh, absolutely.
It is about deliberately tying this cognitive sandbox to physical, habitual actions.
We are talking about the neuroscience of habit stacking and context-dependent memory.
Habit stacking.
Yeah. If you want a new language to stick, you cannot treat it as an isolated academic subject that you study at a desk for an hour a week.
That's just going to fail.
It will. You have to weave it into the fabric of your daily existence.
So what does this all mean? Let's look at the mechanism behind that, because I think a lot of people misunderstand what it means to build a language routine.
They think it's just repetition.
Exactly. But it isn't just about repetition. It is about creating environmental anchors.
Yes.
It's like going for a daily jog. You incorporate it until it's as natural as putting on your running shoes. If you decide that you are only going to listen to this B1 podcast about overthinking while you are making your morning coffee,
Right.
you are physically tying the acquisition of English to the smell of the coffee beans, the tactile sensation of the mug, and the specific lighting in your kitchen at 7 a.m.
Because the brain is an associative machine.
Right.
When you bind the cognitive challenge of language, listening to a deeply ingrained automatic physical routine, like growing coffee or commuting to work, you drastically lower the friction required to engage with the material.
The resistance goes away.
Exactly. The physical routine creates a sense of predictability and safety.
Ah.
And as we discussed earlier, predictability lowers cortisol. Your brain recognizes the environment as safe and routine, which keeps that effective filter lowered, leaving the hippocampus primed to absorb the B1 audio.
It essentially tricks your nervous system.
It does.
If you sit down at a desk with a textbook, your brain signals, we are studying, this is hard work, prepare for stress.
Cue the anxiety.
Exactly. But if you just put your headphones in while you chop vegetables for dinner, your brain signals, we are just making dinner, everything is fine.
Nothing to worry about here.
The language acquisition happens almost as a byproduct of the physical routine. And because the topic is something like, do you overthink everything? You are actually invested in the content.
You want to hear the advice.
Right. You are using the language as a tool to explore your own mind, rather than treating the language as the obstacle itself.
It completely reframes the relationship between the learner and the target language. The language becomes a vehicle for self-discovery rather than a metric of intellectual failure.
That is so powerful.
And explicitly addressing a topic like overthinking in the target language serves a dual purpose.
How so?
It normalizes the psychological struggle of the learner. I mean, language learning induces anxiety.
Ton of it.
By explicitly discussing anxiety through the B1 audio, it creates a feedback loop where the learner is using the source of their stress, the new language, to process and alleviate that very stress.
It is linguistic therapy.
Yes.
You are validating the frustration of the intermediate plateau while simultaneously providing the exact tool needed to conquer it.
Exactly.
This single line of text combining a deep psychological hook with a B1 listening routine really is the perfect blueprint for modern learners.
It really is.
It proves that to break through that devastating intermediate wall, you have to abandon the transactional, sterile textbook dialogue.
Throw them out.
Yeah. You have to seek out material that speaks to your adult intellect, and you have to anchor it to your physical daily habits until processing the new language feels as natural as your morning commute.
The mechanics of this approach are universally applicable, regardless of the target language. By managing the cognitive load through B1 constraints and removing the pressure of immediate production through passive audio, you are giving your brain the exact environment it needs to thrive.
Totally.
But analyzing this methodology, it does open the door to a much larger, almost philosophical implication.
About what?
Well, this raises an important question regarding the nature of language and thought.
It absolutely does, and that is exactly the concept I want to leave you with today. We have spent this entire deep dive exploring how to use a new language to understand the psychology of overthinking.
Right.
And we have established that the cognitive bandwidth required to decode B1 audio is immense. Your brain is working overtime to parse the grammar, infer the context, and follow the narrative thread.
The heavy lift.
So I want you to consider the paradox of cognitive load. If you successfully incorporate this listening practice into your daily routine, you are forcing your brain into a state of hyper-focus just to understand the target language.
Yes.
In psychology, this level of total absorption is often called a flow state.
Right, flow.
When your neural pathways are entirely consumed by the monumental task of decoding new vocabulary and tracking unfamiliar sentence structures, there is simply no processing power left over for your normal native language rumination.
None at all.
Does the intense, demanding focus required to comprehend a new language actually force your brain to anchor itself entirely in the present moment?
Wow.
In attempting to master a language that causes you stress, does the sheer cognitive barrier actually silence your internal monologue, effectively becoming the cure for the very overthinking it discusses?
The idea that linguistic cognitive overload could serve as a functional mechanism for mindfulness is a brilliant paradox.
Isn't it?
The brain simply cannot sustain existential dread and intermediate language decoding simultaneously. One has to give.
It is something to chew on the next time you are brewing your coffee, putting in your headphones, and stepping into that linguistic sandbox.
Absolutely.
The next time you find yourself at a dinner party surrounded by a language you barely know, remember that the goal isn't to flawlessly execute a grammar rule.
No, it's not.
The goal is connection, context, and letting the mechanics fade into the background. Keep integrating those deep dives into your daily routines, and we will catch you on the next one.